Welcome to the ninth edition of the Eastern Himalayan Naturenomics Forum. The Eastern Himalayas, of which Northeast India is a major part, connects two of the world's most populous and bioculturally diverse nations, India and China. It ecologically bridges over 250 million people from over 400 different indigenous groups. The strategic value of this region cannot be overstated, from its centrality as a water source for India, China, and Southeast Asia, to its importance as a global biodiversity hotspot. The region is endowed with rich natural capital, which remains largely untapped and underleveraged, viewed either as an impediment to economic growth or as a battleground for increasingly endangered endemic species such as the Asian elephant, the one-horned rhinoceros, and the Royal Bengal tiger. Since the year 2000, the Eastern Himalayan region has lost 10% of its green cover, an area larger than that of Bhutan and the state of Sikkim put together. 80% of the region is employed in agriculture and other forms of livelihoods directly linked to nature. Long-term ecological degradation has contributed to declining incomes and yields in a primarily agricultural region, forcing people to exploit forests, spurring further ecological degradation. Today, livelihoods in the region are threatened by the vicious cycle of degradation, shrinking incomes, deforestation, further degradation, increasing human-animal war. There is a growing consensus, and a lot of our work has shown that these challenges can be tackled by valuing nature and by facilitating indigenous communities, especially indigenous youths, participation in rewilding our forests and ecosystems, and in recreating the symbiosis that has been disrupted in the recent past. Through the Eastern Himalayan Naturenomics Forum, our goal is to bring together governments, global leaders, corporates, policymakers, and academics from across the world to spearhead policy, investment, and implementation towards enhancing natural capital accounting systems and institute transboundary rewilding programs so we can tackle the multidimensional challenges faced by the Eastern Himalayas. We are grateful to you for your time and support, and hope that we grow together with our forests in the years to come. Thank you.
फ्रेंड्स, जब मैं पहली बार क्लाइमेट समिट में पेरिस आया था, तब मेरा यह इरादा नहीं था कि दुनिया में हो रहे अनेक वायदों में एक वायदा अपना भी जोड़ दूं। मैं पूरी मानवता के लिए एक चिंता के साथ आया था। मैं उस संस्कृति के प्रतिनिधि के रूप में आया था जिसने सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः अर्थात सभी सुखी रहे का संदेश दिया है। आज पूरा विश्व मानता है कि भारत एकमात्र बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था है जिसने पेरिस कमिटमेंट पर लेटर एंड स्पिरिट में डिलीवर किया है। क्लाइमेट चेंज पर इस वैश्विक मंथन के बीच मैं भारत की ओर से इस चुनौती से निपटने के लिए 5 अमृत तत्व रखना चाहता हूं। पहला, भारत 2030 तक अपनी नॉन फॉसिल एनर्जी कैपेसिटी को 500 गीगावाट तक पहुंचाएगा। दूसरा, भारत 2030 तक अपनी 50% एनर्जी रिक्वायरमेंट्स रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी से पूरी करेगा। तीसरा, भारत अब से लेकर 2030 तक के कुल प्रोजेक्टेड कार्बन एमिशन में 1 बिलियन टन की कमी करेगा। चौथा, 2030 तक भारत अपनी अर्थव्यवस्था की कार्बन इंटेंसिटी को 45% से भी कम करेगा। और पांचवा, वर्ष 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा। हमें दुनिया को बचाने के लिए आज बड़े कदम उठाने ही होंगे। यही समय की मांग है और यही इस फोरम की प्रासंगिकता भी सिद्ध करेगा। मुझे विश्वास है कि ग्लासगो में लिए गए निर्णय हमारी भावी पीढ़ियों का भविष्य बताएंगे और सुरक्षित और समृद्ध जीवन का उपहार देंगे।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good afternoon to you all. Excellencies, while contributing less than 0.47% of global emissions, Bangladesh is one of the most climate vulnerable countries. To address this challenge, we established the Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund in 2009. We have doubled climate-related expenses in the last 7 years. Currently, we are preparing the National Adaptation Plan. Ladies and gentlemen, recently, we submitted an ambitious and updated NDC. Bangladesh has one of the world's most extensive domestic solar energy programs. We hope to have 40% of our energy from renewable sources by 2041. We are going to implement the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, a journey from climate vulnerability to resilience to climate prosperity. As the chair of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, CVF and V20, we are promoting the interest of the 48 climate vulnerable countries. We are also sharing best practices and adaptation knowledge regionally through the South Asia office of the Global Center of Adaptations, Dhaka. On behalf of the CBF, Bangladesh is pursuing to establish a climate emergency pact. Excellencies, let me end with following 4 points. First, the major emitters must submit ambitious NDCs and implement those. Second, developed countries should fulfill their commitments of providing $100 billion annually with a 50-50 balance between adaptation and mitigation. Third, the developed countries should disseminate clean and green technology at affordable cost to the most vulnerable countries. The development needs of CVF countries also need to be considered. Fourth, the issue of loss and damage must be addressed, including global sharing of responsibility for climate migrants displaced by sea level rise, salinity increase, river erosion, floods, droughts, and all. I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
I'd like to begin with a word often used in New Zealand that you may not until now at least have heard. It's the word kaitiakitanga. It's te reo Māori, a word in the language of Indigenous New Zealanders, and in my mind it catches the sentiment of why we are all here today. It means guardianship, but not just guardianship, the responsibility to care for the environment in which we live, and the idea that we have a duty of care that eventually hands to the next generation and the one after. We all hold this responsibility, this duty of care in our own nations, but the challenge of climate change requires us to look beyond the domestic. Our duty of care is as global as the challenge of climate change itself. Now, in the Pacific, we feel that acutely, as do countries like Bangladesh, where land is literally being lost and fresh water is being inundated with salt water due to climate change. Now, there is no doubt climate change is one of the greatest challenges of our generation. Whether there will be enough food and fresh water, whether our towns and cities will be free from inundation from rising seas or extreme rainfalls and devastating storms, whether the biodiversity that lends our planet its richness and resilience will survive, whether the growth and economic development that provided an incredible path to lift people out of poverty will be stunted by widespread systemic impacts of climate change. There is no country, there is no region that does not or will not feel the effects of climate change.
Mr. President, Vice President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I had the honor in the year 1995 as the then Minister for Environment of the Federal Republic of Germany to preside over the first UN Climate Change Conference. Today, in Glasgow, COP26 will be the last UN Climate Change Conference for me to attend in this capacity. And thus the question we have to address is, where do we stand? We've taken a number of decisions, as we did yesterday at the G20 summit in Rome. And also, we have the Paris Agreement of the year 2015 as a guiding line. But as we have been hearing more than once, we are not yet where we need to get and where we have to be. The nationally determined contributions submitted and presented by the member states do not take us to what we agreed in Paris. And the world community hopes, and I would like to underline this, that we present ourselves in a better shape at the end of this conference than we found ourselves in at the beginning. It is about the NDCs, but it is very much also about how we can measure our targets and goals in a more binding way, thus providing us with a yardstick. We all know that the impact of climate change is devastating. We must and we can implement the Paris Agreement, I believe. And we should make sure that this does not happen in the course of this century, but as we said at the G20 meeting, by mid-century. We know that the developed countries bear a special responsibility. This is especially true for the Federal Republic of Germany. And this is why we have once again increased our our NDCs. By 2030, we want to cut emissions by 65% from 1990 levels, and we want to be climate neutral by 2045. I believe it to be essential for the credibility of industrialized countries that we provide the finance we promised. Germany and Canada have taken a closer look at the delivery plan on the $100 billion pledge. We have to admit that we will only meet this goal in 2023, belatedly that is, but we're going to meet it. That, I believe, is important. Germany is already making a substantial contribution, and we intend to increase that contribution by 2025 to 6 billion euros per year. Achieving climate neutrality, that is on the one hand our objective, but on the other hand, it also is an indication of the concrete measures we have to take. We are trying to make contributions in a number of areas. With the Glasgow Leaders' Declaration on Forest and Land Use, we are strengthening the protection of forests. For me, it is important that by 2030, we put an end to forest loss globally. We have entered into a successful partnership with Colombia, where we work with Norway and the United Kingdom to further advance the protection of our forests. Germany will be part of an initiative that I believe to be especially interesting, and that is the Just Energy Transition Partnership with South Africa, where we show that it is possible to phase out coal. I think this can serve as a pilot project for many countries on the African continent. Ladies and gentlemen, it will not suffice if we take action only at the level of governments. If we want to achieve the transformation of our lives and our way of doing business, we need more. I thus plead in favor of putting a price on CO2 emissions. If we put a price on CO2 emissions, as we already do in the European Union, that China intends to introduce, and that needs to be developed with other countries in the world. If we develop such a price on CO2 emissions, we can ensure that our industry, our business can develop the best technologies and ways to achieve climate neutrality. It is about changing our way of doing business, our way of working. It is a comprehensive transformation, and if we achieve this, we know how to best achieve CO2-free mobility, CO2-free industry, and CO2-free processes. That's a very clear expression of myself in this decisive decade. Be more ambitious on the national scale, but develop instruments globally that do not mean that we spend taxpayers' monies, but that also make sense in economic terms. And that is, as I see it, putting a price on CO2 emissions. Thank you very much indeed.
Namaskar. It gives me immense pleasure to join the distinguished participants at the inaugural session of the 9th Eastern Himalayan Nasaronomics Forum 2021. I congratulate Balipara Foundation for this great initiative. The discussion on the independence between ecology and economy on this platform is indeed a very timely initiative. Friends, today we are living in a world where climate change and biodiversity loss have emerged as the real challenge to the existence of mankind and nature. The world economy is also greatly affected by climate change and related disaster. A 2020 study of World Economic Forum revealed that over half of the world's total GDP is moderately or highly dependent on nature. This calls for urgent action to reset the relationship between human and nature, and also a paradigm of sustainability in each of the development initiative and economic activities. I appreciate the fact that Balipara Foundation, since its launch, has been working to empower the indigenous and forest fringe communities to create sustainable livelihoods. The unrelenting service of the foundation to grow economy in sync with ecology is really commendable. Friends, as you know, the Northeast India is blessed with large variety of natural resources and a very rich biodiversity. In the front of green economy, the Northeast India has a lot to offer. However, recently the growth prospect of the region is significantly challenged by rampant deforestation and loss of biodiversity. I am very happy that this platform has brought together renowned experts, policymakers, and beneficiaries to engage in meaningful discussion on various aspects of environment and its sustainable development. I am confident that the discussion on this platform would result in meaningful suggestions and greatly contribute to enhance the country's agenda of sustainability. Thank you. Jai Hind, Bande Mataram.
In a post-COVID era, the Himalayan region has to lead by examples and promote its strength of cultural diversity and rich ecology to attract investment in promoting sustainable local business. We have to come together to make the region the next most favored destination by big business.
Development is important, but it has to be sustainable. Our development goals must care for the need of future generation. We should take care of our needs, but we should not be driven by greed.
I look forward to the Eastern Himalayan Naturenomics Forum as a platform where the minds of Eastern Himalayan communities will connect and explore and unfold path-breaking opportunities.
Pollution and climate change are issues of critical concern. Diseases and global warming are seen as a direct result of lifestyle pattern. As a community, we have to harmonize nature with material aspiration. Ecology is to be assimilated with economy in such a way that one reinforces the other.
I'm happy that the Badipara Foundation is working hard to conserve forest and to build sustainable livelihood of the communities in the Northeast. I'm sure that we as a region can work together for sustainable development of our indigenous and rural communities.
Our green heritage, passed on by our forefathers, is our natural capital for us, and the Eastern Himalaya is a global asset. I am personally very pleased to know that Balipara Foundation is advocating the significance of Eastern Himalaya through this virtual forum.